2011 Honda Pilot. She needs brakes and she needs a driver's side wheel bearing. So we're gonna do the right thing and fix it. So we're gonna start taking off this wheel, 22 millimeter. So let's go ahead and buzz this thing off. Alright, so the screws for the rotors are still on. Typically, kind of use an impact right over here, smack it in, and that comes off. Hopefully it should come off. Now, I do recommend keep these and reuse them. These things are great. Holds the rotor in place when you're trying to put everything back together. Alright, caliper bolt. It's 18. Maybe it's 17. Yep, 17. Bolts on the caliper bracket, 19, and they're extremely tight. Alright, pads are worn down a little less than half, but the real issue with these brakes is that these rotors are just like warped like there's no tomorrow. They got a pretty significant lip on them, and I mean, as soon as you hit the brakes, I mean, you feel like your whole car is going to fall apart. So we'll go ahead and definitely change these out. Now, my advice, don't be a pad slapper. And the reason why I say that is there are too many people that all they do is they just put pads on it and they keep going, and the rotors are warped or trash. My recommendation is at least get them turned. That way, if you take them to a place, they will mic them up and let you know if they're within spec. And if not within spec, they won't turn it, and then you'll have to get new rotors. But sometimes you get away with turning it, you'll be good, which is what they cut the rotors. I typically just get new rotors and don't have to worry about it. Alright, this is a 36 for the axle nut. Go ahead and buzz this out. Nice. Usually spin these back in a little bit. Take a hammer and just kind of see if the axle wants to move a little bit, which this one don't. All right, axle's moving freely. Now we can go ahead and get to the bolts that hold this bearing in. They should be 17. All right, these come off easy. What I do is I leave one bolt each diagonal, and the reason why is because we'll probably have to hit this. If this don't come off easy, which I don't foresee it, we're going to smack it with a big hammer. So now if it doesn't work with the big hammer, then I have a puller tool for it, so we'll still leave the bolts in. That way this thing doesn't go flying and I don't get hurt. Alright, I'm going to use this tool over here. Works great for removing front hubs. Our environment is not rusty, so this should work good. So now we'll go ahead and clean this. If you look at it, you see a lot of rust and corrosion. It's a Southern vehicle. That's why this came out so much easier. So we'll just kind of sand it off. And this is more superficial than anything because I really don't have a lot of burrs. So I'll probably just get away with just doing a Scotch pad to kind of rough it up. You can use a wire brush too. Now keep in mind, see if we kind of see it right up here, but there is the speed sensor, so just kind of be mindful of that. You don't want to break it. I probably could get away with taking it off considering that these things don't seize down here, so maybe we'll do that just to kind of make life a little easier. Look at that. For all you guys up north, this is the American dream right here. Look how easy that came out, and it's not even broken or anything. How about that? Good time to clean the magnet, and then I'll probably just sand this smooth, clean that out in there pretty good, and just put some fluid film. So now it makes this a lot easier to clean, as I could just kind of just go all up and down. Alright, that's pretty much mostly clean for the most part. Very happy with it. Feels nice and smooth. Got a little bit of that surface rust, which that's what it was. And also cleaned the face over here so the bearing could sit nice and smooth. So the bearing can sit flat. So we're good on that. Now something I like to do, I love to use fluid film. I don't live in a rusty environment, but we do spend a lot of time in the winter up north, so why not? This will also help the bearing kind of slide in smoother. Now for the bearing, I'm going with a Timken. I like Timken. I've used them for years. Never had a bearing go bad on me. Never had an issue with them. And the price was right. I recommend that if you're going to buy stuff like this, if you can wait, order from Rock Auto. This is like going for $200 at Advance and the local stores. And Rock Auto had this for 50 bucks. So that's pretty significant in savings. And because it was only 50 bucks and I'm doing brakes on both sides, I'm actually going to go ahead and change the bearing on the other side. Typically I just change them one at a time because of the price, but it's my personal vehicle. I drive this a lot, and for 50 bucks, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just change both of them. Mostly put them side by side to make sure they're identical. They look right. The height seems pretty good on that. So pretty confident that we have the right bearing. Alright, so the hub is supposed to be torqued down to 47 foot-pounds according to what I read. Make sure you put a little bit of Loctite on it. That'll kind of gives peace of mind. These things vibrate, so you don't want them to vibrate loose. So I forgot to do it on the other two, but I'll go back and pop that in. Alright, let's put back in our wheeled speed sensor. That goes in right there. Like I said, definitely can't do this up north. Those things like fall apart, they're stuck. So, kind of nice about living in the south. Now this gets tightened to like something like 242 foot-pounds. If I'm wrong, I'll correct it on the screen. But I'm just gonna bring it in. Alright, that's just enough to snug it, and then we'll torque it. Yep, I'm back with this. I forgot to put this cover on. Yep, realized it after I looked over there and realized the cover's over there, not over here. So had to take it all apart. It is what it is. At least I caught it before I put everything back on. So let's try to get this back on, because this seems like it's annoying. Now what I want to do is go ahead and just stake this in before I forget. Alright, on the bench. So this is the old bearing. Feels kind of chunky. It's got a scoring noise and it just don't feel smooth as it should. So definitely bad, definitely the source of our noise. And I kind of ruled it to that side, and we'll go ahead and change the other side. So that's gone. Over here, let's go ahead and service these. Now these are important. I can't tell you how many times that with Hondas, if you go ahead and you buy different aftermarket pads, they don't come with the holes for this. I had a 2009 Honda Accord. It didn't have the holes for these, and these are the anti-drag clips, and this makes sure that they're not dragging on the rotors. I can tell you this right now, not using these, your rotors do warp more prematurely. It's a bit of a tongue twister. So whatever brand you buy, make sure they have these clips. Of course, these are a little stuck. Let's check our pins, which don't feel too terrible. I use this CRC synthetic brake and caliper grease. I've used this for years. I've never had a brake job come back and bite me in the butt using it, and it works fantastic. Some people recommend to use silicone, which that's actually another good way to do it too, but I've never had an issue with these, and well, maybe I'll switch to silicone when I run out of that. Generous amount of grease. Feels really good. Now, burp them. Make sure you burp them. Okay. And after you burp it, just kind of move it back and forth. And if you got to burp it again, go ahead and burp it. Good. I'm gonna do this to the same thing to this side, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do the hardware. For this hardware, I don't know if this is OEM Honda. If it is, I might reuse it. I just might compare it to the one that has there. I reuse them if it's the original, unless they're damaged or messed up. These don't seem bad, but let's see what the new ones look like. For my pads, I went with these Wagner OEX. I've never used them before, so hopefully they're good pads. And the reason why I went with these is because it has this weird technology thing going on, and my wife loves to warp her brakes, so hopefully this will save me $1 or $2 in the long run. Yeah, hardware is mostly the same for the most part. So now for cleaning these, and you probably should do this first before doing the pins if I'm honest. These are not bad. I'm just going to scuff them up with this. Just be mindful of the boot so you don't rip the boot with your wire brush. And you want to make the surface nice and clean. If there's any rust or crap buildup over here, make sure it's smooth, because if not, that's actually going to create more tension on the pad, and the pads are not going to move freely. These are perfect. Now, depending on how bad these are, sometimes you might have to use a more aggressive sanding type compound. This works good. If you live in the South, then yeah, wire brush, smooth, and good to go. I'll take a little bit of brake cleaner. Just clean these off. Good as new. Go ahead and clean your mess, because you don't want to keep contaminating everything. This right here is just a matter of preference. I do this all the time. I just put a nice little skim coat. That way it doesn't build up any rust or corrosion. We do frequent the rust belt quite often, so why not have a little extra preventative maintenance? But typically down here in the South, you don't have to worry about rust jacking back here. So that's all it is, just a light film. Don't build it up too crazy. Let's go ahead and use the new hardware. So now what determines if I use the new hardware or the old hardware, if this sits in perfectly, it's tight, it's not loose, it doesn't seem like it's binding or anything, then I'll go ahead and use the new hardware. If there's something like it's not sitting or it's doing some wonky, there are some brands that happens where the hardware is so cheap and it doesn't work right, I'll go ahead and reuse the old hardware. And typically I'll keep some of the old hardware lying around just in case. Now, what I typically do next before I go to the vehicle is I take my pads and I slide them in. Or at least I try to. There we go. I slide them in. And as long as it's got a very slight drag, then it should feel good. These feel good. They're moving freely. I'm happy with that. So now what you can do too is you could go ahead and pop these in and just kind of slide them into the rotor, which we might go ahead and try that because that's the way I took it out. Now something interesting to note is, I don't know if you see it on the camera, but it says right over here GM SUV front, and this is a Honda Pilot. Go figure. Now for my pads, I go ahead and take a little bit of grease and just kind of put them on the where they slide back and forth. Just very little bit, not a lot. Now we'll take off this side and we'll do the same thing. Now let's put a little bit of this grease right over here, just right where the pads slide, just a little bit. Keep your hands clean. I'll go ahead and put in these pads and we'll see if we're able to mount these on as easy. Okay. And then I usually put those anti-drag clips like after the fact. Well, maybe we could put them in now. What I do recommend is comparing the old ones to the new ones. I've actually run into ones where the OEM hardware is a lot thicker than the new ones, but these feel just the same, so we're going to go ahead and use them. And in fact, I'm going to wait until we put them on because these are spread out more and they're going to push these pads out. So let's go ahead and let's put this thing back together. Alright, back at the SUV. So now let's go ahead and push in these pads. And one of these days I will get the tool to do it at once, but typically I just kind of use this one. This is the mostly designed for single piston, and I just go back and forth like a million times until we're done. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the rotor on. Today's flavor of the rotors, AC Delco. Also courtesy of the Rock Auto. Not sponsored, but the price was perfect on them. So yeah, these should work pretty nice. Just put a little squirt over here. These are new, but still put a little squirt so don't have to worry about them getting stuck in the future. Why not? I'll put these screws back on. These hold the rotors and it makes it so much easier to put the caliper on. Alright, let's go ahead and slide this on. All right, so that's pretty much done. So one of my inspections I always do is I just kind of move these back and forth. And as long as I see the pad moving back and forth, I see the pins moving freely, there's no binding, I'm done. I'll put the wheel on and we should be good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna do the other side, which is the same as this side, and we'll go for a road test. So to wrap up this video, it works pretty good. So I didn't record the drive of driving with the brakes because, well, I forgot. But brakes work good, they feel great. As far as like the braking procedure, there's a lot of opinions and people have different ways of doing it. I mean, I just drive it moderately and don't try to chomp them down, and they usually seat themselves in fine. So I mean, use whatever works for you. So hope this video helps. Thanks for watching. We'll see what we